My name is Kathy Hochwald. I'm the Product Manager at Petrosys, and welcome to today's demonstration. Petrosys is introducing our integration with Doug Insight 3. During this presentation, I'm going to show you just some PowerPoint slides quickly to detail the functionality that we're introducing with Doug, and then I'll do a quick demonstration in the software itself. So we've been working quite closely with Down Under Geo Solutions to bring you this integration between Petrosys and Doug Insight 3. We've just released the first round of functionality, and that's available on both Windows and Linux in version 17.4.3. Included functionality is as follows. So when you're in the mapping module of Petrosys, you can directly display your seismic navigation, both 2D and 3D, from a Doug project. You can also directly display your well data. And you can see in the example here, I've got 2D data, 3D data, and well data, all coming from Doug, but displayed on a Petrosys map. You can directly display your Doug well data and your 3D seismic surfaces in Petrosys' 3D viewer. You can import your seismic navigation, your interpretation, and all of your well data to a Petrosys WDF or an SDF file. So one of the great features here is that you can now bring across your checkshot data from Doug to a Petrosys WDF. And what this means is that you have really easy and quick and accurate depth conversion in Petrosys, because when we have checkshot data, we automatically calculate all your average and interval well velocities. You can use your Doug Insight 3 data in surface modelling. This includes creating grids from either seismic data or well data, and also you can use Doug well data in the well tie option and in phantom gridding. One of the really good features that we've introduced is the ability to be able to export your Petrosys grids back to your Doug Insight 3 project. So an example of this might be you've brought your 2A time data over from Doug into Petrosys and created a 2A time grid. You've automatically got your average and interval velocities calculated from your Doug checkshots in Petrosys. You've gridded them up to create your velocity horizons. You've done a Petrosys depth conversion, and then you can write that Petrosys depth grid directly back to your Doug Insight 3 project. We've also introduced Doug to our Exchange product, which means that if you have seismic surfaces or fault sticks in a Doug project, you can write them directly back to a Paradigm EPOS project on Windows and Linux, or to a SeisWorks project in Linux. I'll now jump into the software and give you a demonstration of how this functionality works. So most of you will be familiar with the Petrosys main menu. The first area that we're going to have a look at is mapping. So one of the recent features that we've got in Petrosys, it was released in version 17.4, is the ability to use dynamic map sheets. So this means that you don't need to predefine a Petrosys map before you can display data. The first bit of data I'm going to show you today is displaying 2D seismic from a Doug project. So in order to do that, you simply select your Doug Insight project. You see here I'm going to bring one across with 2D data. To start off with, let's just display the lines with some line names. You can see here that now these seismic lines are actually stored in Doug, and I'm displaying them on a Petrosys map. I can select one of those lines, and as you see, as I track along that line, the navigation information at the bottom of the screen dynamically updates. If I now double click on that layer, I can turn on the interpretation that I've done in Doug. So in this case, there's just one horizon, and I'm going to display my 2A time data. So now I have a color representation of the interpretation that's sitting in my Doug project. As I mentioned before, you can also display 3D seismic bin grids. So if I click on this icon here, I can connect to a Doug project that has 3D data. So you can see here I've got 3 different Doug projects that I'm going to use in this demonstration. So I just select my project. I'm going to display the survey outline, and I'm also going to post my inlines and my cross lines at an increment of 100. And there's my 3D survey. And just like I could do for the 2D lines, I can track along those 3D lines and watch the dynamic updates at the bottom of the screen. Now in Petrosys you can also dynamically display your 3D surfaces that are coming from Doug or any of our other third-party connections. In this case I'm going to use the values option. So just as before, I would have connected to my 3D project, select the survey, the horizon and the data type, select one of the Petrosys gradients. I'm just going to use the default and press OK. Now in this instance I'm actually still in the process of interpreting this 3D horizon, so I can just see that I've only done about a third of the survey. Now looking across here to our display list, you'll see that I've got 3 layers that are all seismic layers. I'm just going to select all of those layers. I'm going to put them into a single group. So I just go right click, create group, and I'm going to call that group Seismic Data. I'm now going to show you displaying wells in Petrosys. So this symbol here is display wells. You can see that from the large list of third-party applications, I'm going to select Doug Insight, and this time I'm connecting to a project that's got some well data in it. I'm going to just display the surface location. Let's turn on the bottom hole as well. I've got some well annotation and also I'm going to show the deviation surveys for these wells. Now what you'll notice here is that this project actually has well data that's in another area to my seismic data. And this is the great feature of this dynamic mapping, because the area of interest automatically updates to reflect the data that I've got in my display list. So we can just turn off our seismic group now, and now we can easily see that well data. So again, this well data is being stored in my Doug project and I'm displaying it in Petrosys. And just like for all other connections in Petrosys, I could also display my formation tops, and I could automatically compute and display formation thicknesses. Let's just turn off our wells and turn back on our seismic group. What I'm going to do here is now grid this data in the surface modelling module of Petrosys. So if I go back to the main menu, I'm just going to select surface modelling. So I'm going to select Grid, Create Grid. You can see here that I've already given my grid a name. I'm just going to call it Doug. And we're going to have 2 different sources of input data for this example. So the first one here is connecting to our 2D project. And you can see here that I've selected the horizon and the 2A time as our attribute or data type. And I'm going to do the same for the 3D, connect to the project, and you choose your survey, you choose your horizon and your data type. Now we won't grid well data in this example, but I'll just show you that I could also add a well data type, select Doug from my extensive list, connect to the project, and I could grid the formation top subsea in this particular case of a particular formation. But for this particular example, we'll just grid our 3D data, our seismic data. Now the output geometry in this case, I'm going to dynamically determine the area of interest from the data source, and I've got a grid cell size of 500 by 500, and I'm also going to compute some contours for this grid. So if I just press OK, I can run that gridding process, and if I jump back into my mapping window, I could then go and display that grid like that. And the last thing I want to show you in the surface modelling module is the ability to be able to write that grid back to your Doug project. So if I go File, Export, Doug Insight Grid, You can see I can select that grid that we've just created, and I could write that back to my Doug project. So in this case, the sample 3D, I can give it some notes, the domain, etc., etc., and then I would be able to write that grid back to my Doug project. And just in that time, it's done that already. Okay, I'm going to jump now into the 3D viewer module of Petrosys to show you the display of well data. So this is the 3D viewer module. If I just select this icon, which is display well data, I'm going to connect to the Doug project that has my well data. We're going to display the surface. Let's turn off the bottom hole for now. We could turn on the well header at the bottom hole if we liked. We've got our deviation surveys, and we're going to display all of our formation tops. So if I just press OK, there you can see I've got all of my well data displayed in Petrosys that's coming from Doug. If I also had a 3D seismic surface, I could display that directly from Doug as well. Okay, back into the main menu of Petrosys, I'll now show you how you can import Doug data into a Petrosys SDF or WDF. So you use the import button, you go down the list to Doug Insight, and in this case we're going to select Seismic. So I would just simply select my Doug project. You can see here there's one survey with all of the inlines and all of the cross lines. So if you wanted, you could choose specific inlines and cross lines to import. I've got all of my Doug horizon data. They're going to be brought in as new SDF horizons, and they're automatically given the same name as the Doug horizon. I could then bring that into a Petrosys SDF file. But note, I can also use this option to save the 3D survey outlines as polygons, to save those horizons as an XYZ file, or to bring them in as in a Petrosys grid format. If I choose Import Doug Insight Wells, that actually invokes the Petrosys Well Import Wizard. You just, again, simply connect to the project that has the well data. You create a new WDF file, and the important thing to note here is the default seismic reference datum elevation. This is very important if you're going to use those automatic well velocities for depth conversion, because Petrosys uses the seismic reference datum as the reference for all of the velocity calculation. So please make sure that you take the time to enter the correct seismic reference datum here. Down the bottom you'll see that I've got the option to bring in different data types, and the one that I've been talking a bit about is this ability to bring in check shot surveys. And then you just navigate your way through the well import wizard. You can see all of the wells, pick and choose. You can pick and choose from your formation tops, and you can select the way that data will be handled in the Petrosys WDF file. And lastly, I'd like to show you the exchange options. So we have exchange 3D seismic surfaces. And as I mentioned at the beginning, this gives you the ability to select data from your Doug Insight project. And because I'm on Windows here, I can see that I've got the Paradigm EPOS option. So it takes data from your Doug project and writes it directly to your Paradigm project. So you can do this for both 3D seismic surfaces, and you can do it for fault sticks as well. Now notice that as I'm selecting these exchange options, that the surface modelling window is coming up in the rear, and that's because it's often quite useful to be able to take exchange processes and make them part of repeatable workflows. So if I had actually connected this and run this particular task, that would have appeared here as a task that I can run within surface modelling. Just jump back into our PowerPoint show now. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this functionality is available in Petrosys version 17.4.3, And just remember, it's specific to Doug Insight 3. So if you have a project which is older than Doug Insight 3, you'll need to upgrade that project to Insight 3. 17.4.3 is ready for client download and installation. So if you use Doug, please feel free to download 17.4.3 and make use of this great functionality. If you need any help with this particular functionality, installation, or anything else in Petrosys, please don't hesitate to contact Petrosys support at support@petrosys.com.au. Thank you very much.